What's going on, everybody? Mike here with iSMELL. Hope this video is finding everybody well. First things first, I do want to wish everybody a happy holidays. And with the holidays as well as winter officially upon us, it felt only fitting, only appropriate to come to y'all today with some of my favorite winter fragrances. What I have for y'all today are 10 fragrances. Every single one of these are going to rock perfectly in cold weather. Now, I don't want the video to run too long, so I will not be including any honorable mentions. Having said that, we have quite a few fragrances to talk about in today's video. Let's go ahead and get into it. So yeah, we're gonna be coming in hot right out of the gate, you guys, and I do want to let you know that out of everything that I talk about today, this one does rank as the most expensive. It also just so happens to be the one that I am the most excited to talk about. Fragrance number 1 comes from the house of Issey Miyake. The name of this one is Noir Ombre. Yeah, I got the big boy bottle of this one. Now, I blame Randy, aka the fragrance dude, for my obsession over this fragrance. He sent me a decant several months ago, and it was upon first spraying, I absolutely knew I would be purchasing a full-size presentation. Little did I know that there aren't many bottles floating around in the resale market, and because of that, people are selling it for extravagant prices. I've seen prices as high as $300. Do I think this fragrance is worth $300? No. Did I pay $300? No. I do believe I bought this one at a very fair price. Notable notes on Issey Miyake's Noir Ombre is going to include amber, leather, cinnamon, vanilla, saffron, as well as tonka bean. Now, I'll give you a couple sprays of this one and let you know what I smell in it. I already know, I've been wearing it for the past few months. Yeah, it's a beautiful fragrance right out of the gate, you guys. So this fragrance opens up multifaceted, one part being dry spices, the other part being a sweet and slightly animalic leather. It's a beautiful contrast that will eventually over time recede a little bit, and that's when the star player of this fragrance will emerge, and that's the amber. It's an amber and vanilla combo that works beautifully together, and then the fragrance will sit on a base of warm, dry woods. Now, because of the price of this fragrance and because it's not the most mass appealing, this is definitely a fragrance that I would recommend you test drive before you buy. But like the thumbnail implied, this is a video where I'm going to be giving away a decant of any one of these fragrances. So if this is one that you've wanted to check out for some time, just leave a comment below and I'll make sure you get entered into the giveaway. Nonetheless, this is a fragrance that I am more than thrilled to finally have on my shelf in my collection. It's a fragrance that I'm going to be wearing a ton this winter. Heck, I've already started wearing it, as you can tell by the decant. Definitely a fragrance worth adding to your collection this winter. At the number 1 spot today from the house of Issey Miyake, we have Noir Ombre. All right, so the second fragrance that we're going to be talking about today is one that is touted by many, myself included, to be one of the best, really, designer fragrances ever created. Having said that, if you are a fan of Iris, this is one that 1000% at the very least you should get your nose on. Fragrance number 2 comes from the house of Dior. The name of this one is Dior Homme Parfum. So I did purchase this one about 1.5 years ago at the steep price of around $200, but even at that price point, I do maintain that this is a classy, elegant masterpiece. Notable notes on Dior Homme Parfum is going to include iris, rose, leather, sandalwood, and Brett musk, as well as orange. Now, we'll give you a couple sprays on this one as well, even though I am very familiar with the scent profile, because like I said, I've had it for over a year now. It's another beautiful fragrance, you guys. So this one's gonna open up with a conventional orange note. Don't think grapefruit. It's just a simple orange. It kind of just sets the tone and invites you into the composition that will recede fairly quickly into that waxy, powdery, slightly sweet iris that the Dior Homme line is synonymous with. That iris is also paired with a floral rose, and both of those notes can kind of give off a sort of feminine vibe, but it never goes too far in that direction because there is also leather in the composition. It's kind of a rugged leather, a velvety leather, and it does a good job of rilling the composition back and never letting it go too far in that feminine direction. And then I would be remiss if I did not mention that there is a beautiful ambrette musk in this fragrance. As the fragrance dries down and develops more and more, the musk comes to the fold more and more, and it's more and more detectable. It is literally some of the best musks that I've smelt in a fragrance to date. Again, this fragrance can be kind of hard to find in the United States. It's easier to find in Europe. My advice would be to add yourself on to the email list in one of the fragrance discounters. I leave a list of the discounters below in the description of every one of my videos. Just sign yourself up on the list and then get notified when bottles come into stock. That's going to be your best bet. Nonetheless, this is a fragrance that I'm going to be reaching for a ton this winter. It's literally and quite possibly my favorite iris fragrance I've ever personally smelled. At the number 2 spot today, again from the house of Dior, we have Dior Homme Parfum. All right, so the third fragrance that I'm going to be recommending for winter this year, and one of my favorites right now, this is one that initially popped up on my radar a couple years ago. Now, the first person I ever heard talk about this fragrance was, rest in peace, Kevin Samuels, and it immediately piqued my interest based upon the glaringly positive things he had to say about it. Fragrance number 3 comes from the house of Gucci. The name of this one is Gucci Intense Oud. So I would by no means call this an entry-level fragrance, but I do think that for those of y'all that are new to the note of oud, this is a perfect entry point because despite the name Intense Oud, I don't pick up much oud in the composition itself. Notable notes in Gucci Intense Oud is going to include raspberry, incense, olibanum, which is frankincense, agarwood, aka oud, leather, as well as amber. Now again, this is not a mass appealing fragrance, so do not come into this thinking that you're going to be picking up a fragrance that's similar to Gucci Guilty. That is not the truth, or it could be further from the truth, really. I'll give you a couple sprays on this one and let you know what I smell, although I already know what it smells like. Yeah, on this one, you're going to get an underlining sweetness throughout the entirety of the composition from start to finish. That sweetness likely coming from that raspberry note. But the dominant player in this fragrance, the star player, 100% is going to be this smoky, dry, and slightly spicy incense note. This is a smoky fragrance at its core, and it makes sense because you have both olibanum, which is frankincense, as well as incense listed in the note breakdown. That's what you're going to get, but you're also going to get some leathery facets and an ambery accord, which kind of just glues the composition together, and then an extremely dank, dark, woody note. Personally, I find this to be a rather intoxicating fragrance, but opinions may vary. What I can say is if you're looking to mix it up this winter, expand your palette, it's definitely not going to hurt to add this one to your collection. Definitely a fragrance that is one of my favorites this winter, one that I am going to be reaching for. I think it's a beautiful composition in all actuality. At the number 3 spot today, from the house of Gucci, we have Gucci Intense Oud. All right, so I would be really hard pressed not to include this next one in the video, as it's literally a fragrance that I wore for the past 2 Christmases in a row. I have genuine scent memories attached to the fragrance itself. And to keep it a buck, to be completely honest, it's a tradition that I plan on continuing. I plan on wearing it for Christmas this year as well. Having said that, it deserved to be in the video. Fragrance number 3 comes from the house of Zaharoff. The name of this one is Signature Rosé. All right, so again, it is worth mentioning, although I love this fragrance, I don't think it's gonna be for everybody, because at its very core, it's a rose-centric fragrance, and I do think a lot of the male demographic, they don't necessarily lean in towards wanting to wear a rose-centric fragrance. They might find it too feminine. For those of y'all that are out there like that, I would encourage you maybe to get a sample of this one, because the magic of it is in the dry down. This is one that I spray about 2 or 3 times, lasts me about 10 hours, and it pops on my skin. It's magic on the skin. As this thing dries down, it does get more masculine. The notable notes in Zaharoff's Signature Rosé is going to include rose, jasmine, amber, frankincense, myrrh, as well as oud. Now, this is another one that I'm not going to be doing a full in-depth review of with the presentation of everything, because I already have one out there. If you're interested in checking that out, check the marker above. I do have a full review of it. Having said that, I have no qualms with spraying this one because it's a beautiful fragrance. Absolutely love it. Yeah, It's a great fragrance, you guys. So this one is a beautiful dichotomy of airy floral freshness meets sweet jammy rose. It's a beautiful contrast. At the same time, it does have this slight bitterness to how a rose wine would. This is a great fragrance. It's quite complex when you think about it, and then as it dries, some of the more smoky, dark, woody undertones emerge, and there are just slight touches of oud in this fragrance just to kind of glue everything together. Now, I have about 5 Zaharoff fragrances at this point, and this is not my most worn Zaharoff, but I will concede that I genuinely and honestly believe this is the best blended Zaharoff that I have come across so far, but I haven't smelled every Zaharoff. Nonetheless, if you are new to the note of rose, if you want to check out a rose fragrance that becomes more masculine as it dries down, one that works perfectly for the cold weather, I absolutely love this one in the cold weather. In the summer, I find it a little bit too jammy, but in the cold weather, it has this effervescent feeling and dimension about it. It's definitely one worth checking out if you haven't already. I'm not going to rant. At the number 4 spot today, from the house of Zaharoff, one you should check out this winter. Again, from the house of Zaharoff, we have Signature Rosé. All right, so speaking about scent memories, this next one is unique in the sense that it was literally designed with that concept in mind. And by literally, I mean it was specifically designed to replicate specific smells around various locations, and I do believe they did a bang-up job. Fragrance number 5 comes from the house of Maison Margiela. It's from the Replica line. This one goes by the name of By the Fireplace. So as the name would imply, this one means to replicate the feeling of a holiday fire, sitting next to a cozy fire, and I do believe they encapsulated that, put it into a bottle rather nicely. Notable notes on By the Fireplace is going to include chestnut, clove, gaiac wood, vanilla, Peru balsam, as well as cashmerean. So in regards to how this smells, it is a rather linear scent, and by that I mean it smells pretty much the same when you first spray it versus how it dries down, but don't get that twisted with me trying to say it doesn't smell good. I wouldn't be putting it in this video if I didn't think it smelled good. So as a fragrance called By the Fireplace, it should smell smoky, which it does. That's the main note I pick up on right up at the top, and then there's this underlining nutty sweetness coming from that chestnut. That's what you're gonna get, and then you're also gonna get this cozy vanilla sitting through the mid, and then it's gonna sit on a base of fuzzy, warm cashmerean. It's a woody note, and it's kind of just all glued together at the same time. There is no real development. You kind of just smell everything at once, but what I like about this fragrance is it doesn't feel like the notes are fighting with each other. It's very well blended. Now, is this the most groundbreaking fragrance of all time? Is it the most groundbreaking scent profile ever created? No, because there are alternatives in the market. One being Lattafa's Rock by Wood Intense, which I do also own. I don't like that one as much as this one. This one doesn't have that Middle Eastern touch that the Rock by Wood does. The Rock by is even more smoky in all honesty. Personally, I think this one is a well-balanced fragrance, and I'm here to say on the coldest of days, this one cuts through the cold weather like butter, and it does boast above average performance. I'll take that a step further and say that I've even garnered positive attention when wearing this one, as well as people have even complimented it, the bottle itself. They said it's aesthetically pleasing, so take that for what it's worth. Nonetheless, it is a fragrance that I do think that you should add to your collection this winter if you haven't already. At the number 5 spot from Maison Margiela's Replica line, we have By the Fireplace. All right, you guys, so I really went back and forth with this next fragrance. On one end, you have a super popular fragrance that everybody absolutely loves, and I knew if I put it on the thumbnail, people would click. Whereas on the other hand, you have a lesser talked about fragrance, but one that I personally find to be more interesting. Ultimately, I did land on the more interesting option. Fragrance number 6 comes from the house of Lalique. The name of this one is Ombre Noir. So I'm not exactly sure who the first person was that put me onto this fragrance. I am one of the rare reviewers that actually watch other people's reviews, so I'm not sure who the first person I saw review this fragrance was, but I do want to send a big shout out to Juan, aka Fatboy Fragrance, as he is the one who initially sent me this decant. I ran through about half, and then I knew I was going to be purchasing a full-size bottle. Notable notes in Lalique's Ombre Noir is going to include cognac, cinnamon, tobacco, peppermint, papyrus, as well as frankincense. I do also want to point out that there's fig, but for the sake of space on the graphic, I didn't include it. First things first, I want to let y'all know that this one here, although not too many people talk about it, this is the epitome of a hidden gem. Now I'm gonna give you a couple sprays of this one as well and let you know what I smell on this fragrance. This is one that I've been falling more and more in love with the more I smell it, you guys. And my bottle smells slightly more macerated than the sample that Juan sent me. So some of the facets in this fragrance smell quite different than what Juan sent me. Juan's version that he sent me was a little sweeter, whereas mine's a little bit smokier. Yeah, it's a beautiful fragrance. You could just as easily pull this one off during the fall as well. So when this one opens up, you're gonna get this pepperminty bergamot mixed with this fig leaf that is noticeably green throughout the composition. That is going to recede rather quickly, at least the citruses will, and then the fig is still going to remain, and then what's going to come to the fold are going to be aromatic dry spices, most notably the cinnamon as well as the tobacco. This is a tobacco fragrance at its core, but what elevates the composition is going to be this very rich, semi-sweet, boozy note coming in the form of that cognac. This is a boozy tobacco fragrance with herbal facets thrown in, and then in the base, what you're gonna get is this smoky, dry papyrus mixed with this olibanum, and it is going to be smoky. It smells like an incense stick, like one that's actually burning. You're kind of smelling it all at the same time. The notes don't compete too much with each other. Personally, I think it's an incredibly captivating fragrance. This is a stylishly captivating tobacco fragrance. If you're looking for something different this winter to pull off, you're not going to smell like everybody else, and you're not going to break the bank. And those of y'all that know Lalique know they come to the table with quality, interesting fragrances. This is definitely one worth checking out this winter if you haven't already. If this is the one you want to sample, let me know in the comments below. I'll be sure to add you into the giveaway. Nonetheless, it's one of my favorites right now. At the number 6 spot from the house of Lalique, we have Ombre Noir. All right, so moving on to fragrance number 7, we're gonna be talking about a fragrance that is generally perceived to be primarily promoted for women, but don't get that twisted because a man can absolutely pull it off. And I do say that with a fair amount of confidence because this one just so happens to be my wife's favorite fragrance on me to wear. Not to mention, I love the fragrance myself. Fragrance number 7 comes from the house of Tom Ford. Name of this one is Tom Ford's Black Orchid. This one is the EDP. So although I will admit I love this fragrance and my wife loves it on me, I do still think this fragrance isn't going to be for everybody. I do feel like some men might find it to be a bit feminine leaning, more so in the opening than in the dry down. But what I will say is if you're looking for a bold, captivating fragrance with a distinctive character that is going to leave a lasting impression, this is definitely one worth checking out. Not to mention it cuts through the cold like butter. Now this is a fragrance that has a ton of listed notes. So instead of listing every single note, what I'm going to do is let you know the main notes, the main accords to my nose that I pick up on, and that's going to be chocolate, truffle, patchouli, orchid, spices, as well as fruity notes. Now this really is the type of scent that blurs the line between what is niche versus designer, and because there is also an amalgamation of notes in this fragrance, it's kind of hard to pick up one specific note, but for the sake of this video I will do my best. I'll give you a couple sprays even though I'm fairly familiar with what this fragrance smells like, but sometimes it's harder to put into words. All right, this one opens up dark, mysterious, and alluring, while at the same time being inviting because of those fruity floral notes up top. pretty quickly thereafter. It's going to be all about the aromatic spices mixed with this very luxurious vanilla orchid note. Orchid is a synthetic note. It's a fantasy note, so it can come across as a bit synthetic, but it's also going to be paired with this earthy, dark, semi-dank patchouli. So you have fruity, floral, vanilla, patchouli, and then in the dry down, you're gonna get this decadent chocolate truffle note, and it's gonna be blended with this smoky incense, which kind of just glues everything together. Now, personally, I find this to be a rather alluring scent profile, but opinions may vary. But if you're looking for an excellent winter fragrance that's gonna cut through the coldest of weather, something you can wear for date night that is gonna leave a lasting scent memory, a bold, like I said, signature scent type of fragrance, this is definitely one worth checking out. It's one of my favorites to reach for every single winter. That's why I have the big boy bottle. At the number 7 spot today, again, from the house of Tom Ford, we have Tom Ford's Black Orchid. All right, so at this point, a lot of the fragrances that I've mentioned thus far, I will admit, aren't the most mass appealing. What we're gonna do now is go ahead and switch gears and go the complete opposite route. Now, your niche snobs, your people that have been in the game for a really long time, or even just people that lean more so into classic perfumery, they might scoff at this next choice, but for the everyday male, the everyday consumer, I would have a hard time believing they do not think this fragrance smells good. Fragrance number 8 comes from Giorgio Armani. The name of this one is Armani Code Absolute. All right, so for those of y'all that have been in this hobby for any fair amount of time, you've already and undoubtedly have heard about this fragrance, and for good reason. It's literally one of the more hyped fragrance in the designer realm today. And I can see why, because it's literally designed to appeal to the widest array of people. This is a fragrance that is meant to be mass appealing, and I do think that Armani did a great job in achieving that. The notable notes in Code Absolute is going to include green mandarin, apple, nutmeg, vanilla, suede, as well as tonka. I'll give you a couple sprays of this one as well. Pretty good atomizer. Yeah, so this one opens up with a burst of green mandarin and apple, which is kind of sets an inviting tone. There's this certain brightness that will give way to this aromatic freshness, this aromatic spiciness coming from that nutmeg, and then you're gonna have a velvety suede note blended with this sweet tonka. Tonka is one of the main notes in this fragrance, but there's gonna be this overarching theme of vanilla, and the vanilla is done in the format of a lot of the mass appealing designer fragrances that you're gonna smell today. And then you're gonna smell slight florals coming from that orange blossom, but not a large amount. Mostly this is a tonka fragrance with suede thrown into the mix, and vanilla just kind of glues everything together. I personally think this fragrance smells really good. Now, this is a discontinued fragrance, so I would not, sell a kidney trying to acquire a bottle. But if you can find a bottle for about $60 to $65, this is definitely one worthy of being on your shelf. There are fragrances out there that do smell similar, most notably Salvatore Ferragamo's Umo Signature, as well as the extremely popular fragrance that came out this year from Jean Paul Gaultier called Le Male Elixir. I do find that both of those fragrances do smell quite similar to Code Absolute, but nonetheless, I do think this is still a banger. It is still worthy of the hype it receives, and it's one that is worthy of being on your shelf if you can find a bottle at a decent price. Definitely a fragrance that I've already started wearing. It's a good grab and go type fragrance. I like wearing it more so in casual to business casual settings. It's a good work fragrance, for example. Definitely one that I do think you should check out today. At the number 8 spot, from the house of Giorgio Armani, we have Armani Code Absolute. All right, so this 9th fragrance is gonna be perfect for those of y'all that are looking to break into the world of niche without having to break the bank. So much so, I've even heard dialogues as to whether this house even qualifies as niche. Not because of the quality of the blends, but more so because the price of entry is so low. Regardless of what side of the fence you're on, one thing is for sure, this fragrance offers an interesting niche style scent profile at a budget-friendly price point. Fragrance number 9 comes from the house of Guerlain. The name of this one is Guerlain's L'Homme Ideal EDP. So what I really enjoy about Guerlain's L'Homme Ideal EDP is that it's a fragrance scent profile that I find to be both comforting as well as classy. And because of that, it's a fragrance that you can wear in a wide array of scenarios. You can just as easily pull it off casually as you can in formal settings. And because of that, it has a ton of versatility. So the notable notes in Guerlain's L'Homme Ideal EDP is going to include almond, spices, rose, vanilla, leather, as well as frankincense. Now, for those of y'all that are familiar with this line, it comes to no surprise, the basic DNA of the Ideal DNA is retained in the eau de parfum. The main difference being that the eau de parfum is more dense and noticeably more sweet. I'll give you a couple sprays of this one as well. I said couple. Yeah, this is so good, you guys. I don't wear this one as much as I should. Every time I spray it, though, I kick myself in the butt. Man, it just smells so good. For those of y'all that know, I normally don't lean too heavy into the sweet stuff, but when done right, man, this one is done right. So right in the opening, you're going to be introduced to this almond amaretto note. I know cherry isn't listed as an official note in the breakdown, but cherry is the most perceivable note from start to finish in this fragrance. It never fully goes away. The cherry in this fragrance is strong, sweet, and slightly syrupy, almost like a cherry Coke would come off. As the fragrance develops, it does become more smooth and a little bit less sharp, and that's because of that almond again mixed with that vanilla accord. And then you also are going to have spices thrown into the mix, as well as this smoky nuance within the fragrance. The smoky nuances aren't too heavy, and then as it dries down, I would be remiss if I failed to mention that there are tinges of leather in this fragrance. It's not overdone with the leather, but more so as the fragrance dries down, the leather does come into the fold. And again, the cherry never fully dissipates, so the feeling and the vibe you get towards the end of this fragrance is a cherry leather with smoky nuances. I absolutely love this fragrance, you guys. Now, I have had this bottle for going on 3 years. Newer formulations have the black cap. I cannot speak to the performance on the black cap one. This one does have above average performance. For those of y'all that do have the black cap, please feel free to leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about the newer formulation and let us know if it's still a worthy pickup. Nonetheless, if you enjoy the note of cherry, if you're looking to expand your palette this winter, add something a little bit different into your collection, dive into the world of niche, this is definitely one worth checking out. At the number 9 spot today from the house of Guerlain, we have L'Homme Ideal EDP. All right, guys, last but not least, and if you are still watching, big salute. I really do appreciate it. I know I don't get to upload as much as some of the other reviewers, so the fact that you're still watching genuinely means something. I try to put together concise, informative reviews. I don't try to throw flop out there, so the fact that y'all are still watching, it really does mean something to me. But we're gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. We started with an iris fragrance. We're gonna go ahead and move full circle and end with an iris fragrance, but I'm gonna go on record. I'm gonna take it a step further to state that this next fragrance, it bears no similarity to this first one. It would be in no way redundant to own both. Fragrance number 10, last but not least, comes from the house of Prada. The name of this one is Prada L'Homme Intense. All right, so for those of y'all that are familiar with this line, yet haven't smelt the Intense version, you might be a bit surprised. I was a bit surprised the first time I smelt the Intense version because it's not too far off from the original, but in terms of the scent profile itself, they changed just enough to where the moniker of Intense is fitting. The notable notes in Prada L'Homme Intense is going to include iris, tonka, leather, amber, patchouli, as well as sandalwood. Now I'll give you a couple sprays of this one as well. Yeah, so this fragrance, at least in my opinion, I do find it to be rather linear. Again, that doesn't mean bad. It just means there's not a ton of development in the fragrance. And I would say the overall vibe, the overall feeling, that Prada L'Homme feeling is retained in the fragrance. The notable difference to my nose is going to be the substitution of that bright floral neroli, and it's being substituted with dense, dark tonka bean. This is a noticeably more rich, more dark, ambery. It's a slightly more complex version of the original, which isn't a bad thing. In terms of the iris, that is going to be the main star player of this fragrance, as the line should be. The reason why I say it's not redundant to own Dior Homme Intense or the Parfum versus Prada L'Homme or Prada L'Homme Intense is because the iris used in Prada is different than the iris that is used in Dior Homme. Dior's iris is kind of waxy and powdery, whereas the Prada's is powdery and fresh. Prada is known to produce fresh, powdery fragrances, and that is going to be the case with this one. There is leather in the breakdown, but I don't get tons of leather. It is subtle. This is a well-blended fragrance with more performance versus the original, so the moniker of intense is fitting. But nonetheless, I do think if you own Prada L'Homme, the original, you don't need this one. I don't own that one. I just have Prada L'Homme Low, which I wear in the summer, and then I have Prada L'Homme Intense that I wear during the winter, and for me, that's good enough. Nonetheless, it is an iris fragrance that is worthy of the hype it receives. It's a good everyday grab and go. Although this is not my favorite iris fragrance, it is going to be one of the iris fragrances that I wear the most, just because it has a ton of versatility and a ton of wearability. Because if you can find a bottle around $100 to $120 for the bigger one, I do think that's about the sweet spot. Nonetheless, this is a fragrance, a winter fragrance that is one of my favorites. It's gonna be one that I reach for a ton this winter. Last but not least, at the number 10 spot from the house of Prada, again, we have Prada L'Homme Intense. All right, you guys, that's pretty much a wrap for the video. Those are 10 of some of my favorite winter fragrances right now. Every single one of those 10 are gonna rock perfectly for the coldest days of the year. Now, as it relates to the giveaway, this is what you gotta do. Just leave a comment below. Let me know which fragrance that I talked about that you want me to send you a decant of, and I'll send that decant out to you free of charge. Just my way of saying thank you for checking out the whole video. I will choose a winner for the giveaway about 1 week after the video is uploaded, and I do plan on live streaming about a week or so from the date that this video uploads as well, so we're not going anywhere. Listen, I really do love and appreciate all the support, even more so because I'm aware that I don't upload as much as some of the other reviewers, so the fact that y'all still tune up, it genuinely means the world to me, y'all. I don't take it lightly. Until next time, you guys, y'all take care, stay safe. I'll see y'all around, and good luck on this giveaway, okay? All right.